If a woman ignores you, let that silence become your signal, not to chase, not to plead, not to crumble, but to rise. Because how you respond to rejection, indifference, or distance reveals more about your strength than any amount of smooth words or grand gestures ever could. You are not defined by who pays attention to you. You are defined by what you pay attention to within yourself. Let me ask you something. What if that silence wasn't an insult, but a gift? What if her distance wasn't a curse, but a compass pointing you back to something far more important, your own value, your own mission, your own power? Every man will face this moment, that sharp, awkward realization that someone you wanted to be seen by simply doesn't see you, or maybe she does, and still chooses not to engage. And in that split second, ego flares up, pride gets bruised, and suddenly you're at a crossroads. Do you act out of need or out of purpose? And here's the truth. The confident man, the man who knows who he is, doesn't chase approval. He doesn't break himself down to be more digestible. He doesn't beg for recognition. He lets silence echo because his life is already loud with meaning. Let's be real. We live in a world that teaches men to perform for validation. That tells you your worth is measured by attention, that your masculinity is proven by how many hearts you can collect. But the real ones, the rare ones, they understand something deeper. That self-worth is not a popularity contest. That silence from another is not emptiness. It's space. Space you get to fill with intention, discipline, purpose. So the first thing you must do when a woman ignores you is this. Redirect your energy inward. Don't project your worth outward. Rejection isn't a loss, it's redirection. It's life telling you, look inward, upgrade, focus, grow. Let it sharpen you. Let it humble you. Let it remind you that your greatest work isn't external, it's internal. And understand this, no one can ignore a man who is truly in motion. Not fake motion, not noise, not flexing. I mean real movement. I mean waking up with drive, training your body, sharpening your mind, refining your spirit. When you move like a man on a mission, people feel it. You don't need to chase because your energy speaks louder than your words. You think kings walk around begging for attention? No. They sit on thrones they built from years of silent labor, and those who recognize their value show up in due time. And those who don't, they were never meant to be part of the kingdom. You don't need to win anyone over. You need to win over yourself. And that means falling in love with your solitude. It means building so much inner wealth that external validation becomes a nice addition, not your foundation. So the second thing you do is this: upgrade your life. Not to get her back, not to prove a point, but because your life is your responsibility. The gym, make it your sanctuary. Books, make them your allies. Money, stack it with purpose, not to impress, but to liberate. Vision, let it be so clear that even if you lost everyone today, you'd still wake up tomorrow with fire in your chest. Do you know what's more attractive than words? Consistency, growth, presence. A man who isn't looking for something outside to complete him, but is too busy becoming someone unshakable within. And the third, perhaps most important thing to remember, protect your dignity. Don't let disrespect rewrite your behavior. Don't react to the cold shoulder with desperation or petty games. If someone withdraws their attention, respond with grace. You don't need to match their energy. Rise above it. Because if you stoop low to get noticed, you may get attention, but you'll lose your power. A confident man doesn't need to manipulate. He doesn't need to impress. He simply is. And from that place of groundedness, people are either drawn in or they move on. And either way, he remains unmoved. Let's take it deeper. The man who responds well to being ignored is the man who no longer needs external confirmation of his worth. That kind of man is dangerous. Not because he's cold, but because he's complete. Not because he doesn't feel, but because he doesn't fall apart. His power is quiet. His confidence is calm. His presence speaks for itself. There will be moments where your heart wants to reach out, to fix, to chase. And in those moments, you must lead your emotions, not be led by them. Emotional control is not about being numb. It's about being wise, knowing when to act and when to observe, knowing when to walk away, not with bitterness, but with honor. So many men fall apart the moment attention is withdrawn. But the ones who win in life, they rise. They double down. They become more focused, not less. They train harder, read deeper, move smarter. They turn rejection into evolution. Every man needs that silence. He needs that moment where he's ignored, overlooked, underestimated, because that's the moment where he realizes, I don't need them to see me. I just need to see myself. That's the pivot point. That's when boys become men. That's when pain turns into power. So if you're going through it, if someone you wanted turned cold, if messages go unanswered, if your presence feels invisible, take a breath, then smile, because you've just been handed an invitation to greatness. This is your chance to rise, not to react, to level up, not to lash out, to choose dignity, not desperation. The most powerful men in history weren't the loudest. They were the ones who walked into silence and found clarity, who turned absence into alignment, who stopped begging to be chosen and chose themselves instead. And that's what I want for you, to act like a man who knows his value, regardless of who affirms it, to build a life so magnetic, so grounded, so full of purpose, that the right people recognize it without you having to say a word. Let this moment be your turning point, not because someone ignored you, but because you remembered who you are. And from that place of remembrance, rebuild, refocus, rise. Good. Now that you're here, stay here, in this energy, in this fire, in this space where rejection becomes revelation, where silence no longer breaks you, but builds you, where the absence of someone else's voice forces you to finally listen to your own. Because this is where transformation happens, not when you are surrounded by applause, but when you are surrounded by quiet. Let's talk about what truly happens when a man decides to stop seeking attention and instead becomes the source of it. Not by force, not by flash, but by the sheer power of discipline, presence, and purpose. You start to walk differently. You begin to think with clarity. You no longer attach your value to someone's reaction or their lack of it. You recognize that your time, your energy, your mind is a kingdom. And not everyone deserves access. When a woman ignores you, it's not about her. That's the truth most people avoid. Because we want to believe it's about fixing the external. That if you say the right thing, do the right thing, wear the right thing, you'll win her back. But that's not the game. The real work is realizing that being ignored reveals more about the cracks in your own identity than it does about hers. And if you're paying attention, you'll fix not the crack in the relationship, but the foundation of yourself. So ask yourself right now, why did this bother me so deeply? Is it because you tied your sense of significance to someone else's attention? Is it because you saw her recognition as proof of your value? If so, good. Not because it's healthy, but because now you know. Now you're awake. And now you can begin the most important work of all, detaching your value from anything or anyone outside of you. That's the real awakening. That's the real moment of freedom. When you stop trying to prove yourself and start improving yourself. When you stop trying to convince others you're worthy and start living like you already are. That's when people notice. That's when everything changes. Not because you needed their validation, but because you transcended the need for it. You see, the man who is ignored and reacts emotionally is still bound. He is tied to the chains of approval. He is not yet free. But the man who is ignored and doesn't flinch, he's dangerous. Because now he's operating from power, not pain. He's no longer looking back. He's looking forward. He's not writing paragraphs begging to be seen. He's writing plans that change his life. And when you walk in that kind of presence, you no longer have to chase connection. It finds you. But here's the secret. By the time it finds you, you're so focused, so dialed in, so committed to your own evolution that you don't even need it. And that's what makes it all the more powerful. Let me tell you something you already know, but may need to hear again. You are not invisible. You are not unwanted. You are not unloved. You are simply in a season of refinement, and refinement always looks like rejection to the untrained eye. But you are training your vision. You are learning to see the blessing in being overlooked. You are learning to use pain as a sculptor, carving out the strongest, sharpest, most grounded version of yourself. And the moment you truly grasp this, everything shifts. Because then you stop moving for applause and start moving from alignment. You stop living to be liked and start living to be legendary. You stop begging to be noticed and start building something that cannot be ignored. Imagine that, waking up tomorrow and living like you no longer needed anyone's attention to feel worthy. Imagine how much energy would be freed up if you stopped obsessing over who's watching and started focusing on what you're becoming. That's not fantasy. That's a decision. A choice you make every day, every hour, every moment. You choose to put your phone down and pick up your purpose. You choose to respond to silence with solitude, not self-pity. You choose to be so grounded in who you are that even if the entire world went quiet, your inner voice would still roar with certainty. And hear me when I say this, your evolution is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to stretch you. That's why being ignored feels like a sting. It's not just about her, it's about everything you thought you needed to feel significant. And when that gets stripped away, it hurts. But that pain? That's growth in disguise. That's your soul getting stronger. That's your confidence learning how to stand without crutches. The world is full of people performing for validation. But you're not one of them anymore. You've graduated from that level. Now your validation comes from your habits, from your vision, from the way you treat your body, your time, your dreams. That's what makes you powerful. That's what makes you rare. And here's the final truth. How you handle silence is how you handle life. Because life will not always answer you back. You will not always get closure. You will not always get a response. But you still have to move. You still have to grow. You still have to build. And the men who learn how to keep walking, even when no one claps, even when no one notices, they are the ones who one day look back and realize they built everything in the dark. So let her ignore you. Let the world go quiet. Let the messages go unanswered. While they sleep on you, rise. While they underestimate you, develop. While they choose distraction, choose discipline. And watch what happens. Watch how the silence that once hurt becomes the soil that grows your legacy. And one day, maybe she'll notice. Maybe they'll notice. Maybe they'll wonder how you became what you became. But by then, you won't need their attention, because you'll be too focused on your mission, too committed to your peace, too in love with your life. That's how you respond when a woman ignores you. You don't chase. You don't collapse. You don't rage. You evolve. You elevate. You execute. You walk away not out of weakness, but with wisdom, because you know what she doesn't yet. Your value was never in her reply. It was always in your response. Good. You're still here. That means something inside you is ready to go deeper. Not surface-level motivation. Not quotes and clips and temporary fire. I'm talking about a full transformation of the way you see yourself, the way you move, the way you respond to this life. You didn't come this far to get crumbs. You didn't endure that silence to go back to who you were. You came here to become undeniable. So let's go all the way. You want to know how to keep walking when it feels like no one sees you? Start by realizing this. Being overlooked is not a curse, it's a test. Life is watching. Not the life you scroll through, the real one, the quiet one, the one you live when no one is watching. And it's asking, can you stay disciplined even when no one is clapping? Can you stay consistent when the feedback is silence? Can you keep rising without a witness? That's what separates men who make it from men who fake it. Because anyone can grind when there's attention. Anyone can flex when they're being watched. But it takes a different breed to sharpen themselves in the shadows. It takes a warrior to keep building when it feels like no one cares. And that's the man you're becoming. Slowly, quietly, unshakably. Let's break something right now. The belief that you need her to understand you, to appreciate you, to respond to you. You don't. You never did. What you need is for you to understand you. For you to stop abandoning yourself when someone else doesn't choose you. For you to stop handing over your power to silence. Because here's the dangerous truth. If you let one person's attention, or lack of it, determine your energy, your mood, your path, you're not living. You're performing. You're auditioning for approval. But real men don't audition. They decide. They declare. They become. They show up with the kind of presence that doesn't ask permission to be seen. So let's say she never texts back. Let's say the people you thought would support you never do. Let's say you're walking through life right now and it feels like no one's clapping. Good. That's your training ground. That's your wilderness. That's where God, the universe, whatever you believe in, strips away the need for outside approval and forces you to find your worth in your work. You become dangerous the moment you stop needing to be liked, when you're no longer softened by flattery or broken by neglect, when your sense of self is forged through process, not praise. That's when you can walk into any room and own it, not because of how they see you, but because of how you see you. So what do you do next? You get ruthless with your time. No more wasting hours wondering what she's thinking. No more rereading messages. No more trying to decode silence. You use that time to build. You use that energy to transform. You use that space to become so grounded, so focused, so purpose-driven that anyone who chose to look away will wish they hadn't. Rejection is fuel. Use it. Every great man has faced it. Every king was once invisible. Every powerful story starts with pain. But not everyone decides to turn that pain into power. Some let it paralyze them. Not you, not anymore. You're turning it into momentum. You start with your body, because that's your base, your first layer of confidence. You train not just to look good, but to feel powerful. You discipline yourself to rise early, to suffer in silence, to become the kind of man who earns his strength, not just physically, but mentally. You read, you journal, you write out your goals until they're burned into your mind. You get financially literate. You don't just chase money, you learn to make it move for you. You stop impressing people and start investing in your future. You study the game, you master a skill, you build something that gives you leverage in this world. And spiritually, you don't just read quotes about faith, you live it. You walk like you're guided. You let go of the outcome and focus on the effort. You trust the silence because you've learned it's sacred. That's when you stop panicking when people pull away, because you've been here before, and every time it made you stronger. Do you understand how rare that makes you? To walk away from disrespect without bitterness, to respond to rejection without revenge, to rise from being ignored with peace and purpose. That's strength. That's real masculinity. And that's the kind of energy that shifts rooms without saying a word. Let's go even deeper, because if you really want to fix your life after being ignored, you have to stop trying to win her back and start winning yourself back. You get back to your essence. Who were you before her? What did you dream of before you got distracted by someone else's attention? What were you building before you paused to chase someone who stopped clapping? Resurrect that man. Reignite that mission. Reclaim that fire. You don't need to be chosen to feel chosen. You choose you, over and over again, until the noise dies down and your focus returns. Because when you move like you were never abandoned, like you were always complete, something changes. People start noticing, not because you screamed louder, but because you walked taller, not because you got revenge, but because you got results. You think she'll regret ignoring you? Maybe. Maybe not. That's irrelevant, because this isn't about her anymore. This is about you, your growth, your mission, your legacy. You don't need her to wake up. You need you to wake up, to remember who you are, to remember what you're capable of when your heart gets broken and your mind gets clear. Now you make promises to yourself, and you keep them. Now you stop explaining yourself to people who aren't trying to understand. Now you stop lowering your voice just to be heard by someone who already tuned out. Let them walk. Let them wonder. You stay rooted. And if the silence ever hurts again, and it will, you'll smile. Because now you know, that silence, it's not emptiness. It's a mirror. It's a challenge. It's a test. And every time you respond with grace and growth, you level up again. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be legendary. You're not here to fit in. You're here to rise. And if that means walking alone for a season, then so be it. Because that's where warriors are made. That's where kings are crowned. So rise, brother. Let her silence be the soundtrack to your comeback. Let her absence be the echo that reminds you of your own voice. And let this moment, this exact one, be the one you look back on and say, that was the day I stopped chasing approval and started chasing greatness.